Dearest respected brothers and sisters, dearest viewers wherever you may be, from Adam to Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family, as we dig deeper into the lives of the prophets of Allah in order to derive lessons from their lives and apply them into our lives today. Now last night we discussed Prophet Adam alayhi salam, and as we were getting closer towards the end of Prophet Adam's life, we got to his son and the second Prophet of Allah, Prophet Sheeth alayhi salam. Now I'd like to remind the viewers that you can call in and ask the Sayyid a question on 0203 515 0199, or alternatively texting your questions down below. I'd like to also thank our dear viewers for the thousands upon thousands of messages that have been coming in over the past few days, thanking the Sayyid, thanking the studio, sending your salams to the Sayyid, even questions and personal messages. Now, the viewers, you can watch our show, you can watch Imam Hussein TV 3 live on your application, on your iOS or Android phones, or IPTVs, or even Roku. But without further ado and without keeping you waiting, Sayyidina, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
How are you doing today?
Fantastic. Yourself? Alhamdulillah. Everything's
Alhamdulillah. So Sayyidina, last night we began to discuss the life of Prophet Adam alayhi salam and his family. And naturally looking to understand how the prophethood continued. So now we briefly touched on Qabil and Habil. What was their marital status?
Yeah, Qabil and Habil were both married at the time. And you find that their father, he was in old age. They had got married. Habil had just found out that his wife was pregnant. Qabil himself had his offspring. Qabil was married to a lady by the name of Johanna. And Habil was married to a lady by the name of Turk. From what we see of the sources, a very humble lady, of great reverence, of great respect. And, for the both of them, it was amazing news when he found out that his wife was pregnant. But alas, he was going to face a major test shortly after that. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that Habil would face a major test. Now, of those tests, what was it that Prophet Adam alayhi salam did to ensure that Habil was the one who was going to carry the mantle on guiding mankind?
Well, first, Prophet Adam or any prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot choose their successor. They announce the successor. The appointment of that successor is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are numerous verses in the Holy Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it clear that He has legislative as well as creative authority or guardianship. It is not fitting for a prophet that they are the ones who choose who succeeds. They can certainly mention something like وَاجْعَلْ لِي وَزِيرًا مِنْ أَهْلِ, for example. But you'll find that the appointment of Allah's representative on earth is made solely by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. رَبُّكَ يَخْلُقُ مَا يَشَاءُ وَيَخْتَارُ مَا كَانَ لَهُمُ الْخِيَرَةُ. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states that He creates what He wants and He chooses. The choosing is not with them. But Nabi Adam alayhi salam ensures that with his son Habil, he ensures that he teaches him the knowledge which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him. Allah taught him the names. The names, of course, refers to different areas of knowledge. One may argue a metaphorical understanding of the names is the names of every bit of knowledge that you require of the heavens, of the earth, of the seen, of the unseen. And so he has this very close relationship with his son Habil, preparing him to take over the mantle of being the guide for humanity at the time. You also notice how important it is for a prophet to ensure that he announces a guide for humanity at the time or at any time. No prophet would leave their community to make their own decision, because the community is made up of human beings who all have their own self-interests. And when they have their own self-interest, they're going to make sure that they're going to choose those who are closest to them. Yeah.
But you say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses the successor. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses the successor, surely He will infuse the successor of the previous prophet with ilm, with knowledge.
Yeah, knowledge is the most important criteria for God's representative on earth. And so what you have is that Nabi Adam alayhi salam has ensured that he continues to pass on pieces of wisdom, not just knowledge, to his son, in order that his son Habil is able to take over the guidance of mankind.
Now, as we know, Qabil was the eldest son of Prophet Adam alayhi salam. Of course, older than Habil. Now, what was it that inflamed Qabil when
Qabil could not believe that Nabi Adam alayhi salam's successor wasn't him. He thought that I'm the eldest son and I deserve every right to be the successor. And so here you have this very difficult moment. The human community is such a small community. And being a small community, you still have tension, you have rivalry, you have envy. Especially when there's a position of power up for grabs. And so Qabil is adamant, he's not happy, and his Lord tells him, listen, and his father tells him that the Lord is the one who appoints the successor. It's not my choice who succeeds. And so when he hears this, he's frustrated with it. And his frustration, his father can see the evident frustration. So the father makes it clear that, look, both of you give an offering of some sort. And that offering that you give, the one which is accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, according to some beliefs, not just Muslim beliefs, but even Jewish beliefs, that if fire consumes something, then it has been accepted from the heavens, from the Lord. So, Habil, you offer something. Qabil, you offer something. And let's see which one God accepts. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saw that Habil offered the best of his sheep. Okay? In those early days, most of these prophetic figures are shepherds. Yeah? And that of course continues later on. But you find that Habil offers the best of his sheep. Let's say like the fattest sheep possible. Whereas Qabil offers certain amounts of grain that are worthless. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it clear that what is accepted is that which comes from sincerity and from the pious. Yeah. Even if you gave thousands upon thousands of grains and Habil only gave one sheep, Habil gave it with love, with sincerity. And that makes a huge difference. So what you had is that the fire seemingly consumes the sacrifice or the offering of Habil. When Qabil realizes that God has chosen Habil's sacrifice, this brings about a rage in him. A rage where he's willing to kill his own brother. Yeah.
Now, that rage, was it his nafs? Because we blame the nafs sometimes.
Yeah.
Was it his nafs or was it the shaitan whispering in his ear?
I think the evidence can be seen within Islamic literature that shaitan... Now remember, shaitan's already had a battle with Adam. And shaitan's like, hold on, I couldn't necessarily get through Adam alayhi salam, and I'm not going to be able to. However, with Qabil, I think I could get through to him. And not just get through to him. Let me use him and his progeny. And I'll use them to be the opposition to all the good that is represented by Adam and Habil alayhim salam. Okay? So shaitan begins to have this effect, which we all are affected by. Listen, shaitan's clientele is massive. Shaitan has some huge clients. And a lot of these clients that shaitan has, you'll see, have been affected by the وسواس قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. So shaitan has this effect on Qabil. That Qabil, listen, you're going to be remembered forever as the elder brother who achieved nothing. You're going to be remembered forever as the one who offered a sacrifice that was rejected. You're going to be remembered forever, or in some cases, you may not even get remembered if you don't get that position.
Wow.
So many of us will say, أعوذ بالله من شر الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. And many of us should even, before we begin our prayers, say, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. There are ulama who would focus that, you begin your prayer, Allahu Akbar, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. There'll be ulama who stress that before we would begin our salah, we'd begin, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Because we know very well that shaitan, once he gets those whispers in, he can tempt you to all sorts of disobedience. If he's going to tell that, listen, this person's become more known than you. This person's getting more famous than you. This person is getting more accolades than you. This person has become wealthier than you. This person is being loved more than you. And this person is being admired more than you. You're willing to go to any extent. Never ever think that you've reached a position where you're not going to get affected by shaitan. This is the son of a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is not somebody who just comes from any normal family or from any background. The son of a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who's clearly been affected. And shaitan's pounced on him. Now when someone could tell me the story of Adam happened thousands of years ago, I'll tell them that that lesson still affects us today. How many of us, shaitan has whispered something. Now, we humans have a habit of blaming everybody but ourselves for an act. Don't we? So we humans have this habit where we'll be like, you know what, it wasn't me. Shaitan's too strong for me. Shaitan says on the day of judgment, don't blame me, blame yourselves. I invited you. You accepted the invite. فَلَا تَلُومُونِي لُومُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. There are many of us, we're very good at blaming shaitan. And we'll be saying, you know what, I would be so religious if it wasn't for shaitan. Well, you know what, shaitan taught you a lesson with Qabil. That what's the listening to shaitan leads you to destruction. This Qabil listens to the whispers of shaitan, thinking that, you know what, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to earn respect. And look at the difference between somebody appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and somebody who isn't. There is that person who's appointed by Allah who when his brother says لَأَقْتُلَنَّكَ, he says لَإِنْ بَسَطْتَ إِلَيَّ يَدَكَ لِتَقْتُلَنِي مَا أَنَا بَاسِطٌ يَدَيَّ إِلَيْكَ لِأَقْتُلَكَ. You could come forward and strike me. I'm not going to go ahead and begin this altercation with you. So you've got this altercation that we can see in Surah 5 from verse 28 onwards of the Holy Quran. And he lashes out on his brother. He picks up a rock and smashes his brother's face until his brother's killed. One of the saddest moments in the history of humanity, and probably the first killing in the history of humanity. You find all these hadiths where the Imams of Ahlul Bayt ask questions like, when was humanity, for example, cut by a quarter or cut by a third? And they'll always mention, well, that was it. Because the human community was a small community. And yet he gets a rock. And it's sad how many times we hear stories of, and that's why Islam focuses on Salat al-Rahim so much. Salat al-Rahim is not easy. It's not easy. But whatever you do, even if you have problems with your brothers, with your sisters, with your cousins, with your relatives, don't reach a level where you're going to be affected by shaitan that you're willing to see them die.
Now you mentioned a very good point. You mentioned it was the first killing in humanity because humanity was such a small population back then. In our community today, when someone dies, we have a janazah for them. Back then, it was unheard of. It was the first death. So how was it that Habil was buried?
It's interesting. The Quran touches on this. The Quran says that once Qabil kills Habil, he's in this really baffled moment because he's just looking around thinking, hold on a minute, I've just killed someone. What do you do when you kill someone? Now, me and you have been to funerals. Me and you have been to janazas. We've been, to different cemeteries. We've been to areas of ghusl. We've seen the stages. But this Qabil is just standing there thinking, what's going on here? And he's taught by an animal. Don't dismiss the animal world. There are many lessons to be learned from the animal world. Sometimes a dog is more loyal than a human being. Sometimes Imam Ali points to the peacock and he says, the peacock, if you want to know the meaning of arrogance, look at the peacock. Because the arrogant is always insecure. The peacock, it stretches out its feathers so that you don't look at its skinny legs. It's insecure about its skinny legs. And so what you have is also here another lesson with the crow. The crow, he sees the crow burying another crow and he's just thinking, hold on a minute. Now I know how to bury my brother. There's an embarrassment in him. Short-lived, but there's an embarrassment. But subhanallah, a crow. There are certain animals that we don't know about their parents, but they suddenly appear. Like the sheep in the story of Ibrahim. Or the camel in the story of the people of Nabi Salih, who we will come to soon. Or the crow. You're not seeing the crow parents at the time, but the crow suddenly emerges, and when the crow emerges, you find that Qabil learns from a crow how to bury the first human being to be killed. Yeah.
Now, when a killing happens, naturally, you mentioned in the beginning that Qabil and Habil were both married. Now, how was it that Habil's wife was affected by this?
Habil's wife is devastated with what's happened. As I said, she's pregnant. And, anybody who loses a husband is difficult for them. But especially a husband who you admire, someone you love. Habil is somebody appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a righteous individual. So his wife, Turk, she's really affected. Nabi Adam's devastated as well. Hawa is devastated. Eve is devastated. It's a very difficult moment for all of them. Yeah.
Now, with Prophet Adam alayhi salam, it was the first time that he had experienced sadness and sorrow. Now, what was his initial reaction, and what lessons can we take from that situation in our lives today?
He mourns for 40 days.
Subhanallah. Instantly clicks.
We have this concept in our communities in the Muslim world known as the Arba'in. For 40 days he mourns the death of Habil. He's a father.
Yeah.
What is a child except the heart of a mother or father walking outside their body? From there we got the understanding that 40-day period is pivotal in Islamic thought.
Yeah.
There are many of us who have heard the tradition that when a believer dies, the heavens and the earth weep for them. The heavens weep for them for 40 days. Sometimes you hear people saying, why do you guys stress on Arba'in so much? Some Muslims even will say that when somebody dies, just mourn them for 3 days. I don't deny that as long as you have traditions in your school which you want to follow, then you can follow. But in the school of Ahlul Bayt, alayhim salam, we have our Prophet mourning Sayyidah Khadija and Abu Talib in what was called the year of grief. Didn't just say 3 days.
Ahsant, yeah.
You have, for example, Imam Ali alayhi salam, after the death of the Prophet, peace be upon him and his family, many years after, he has not recovered from the death of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon his family. And you'd think that Imam Ali, why don't you just mourn for that many days? Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam, when her dad dies, she constantly goes to the house of sorrows, the house of grief.
Yeah.
But Nabi Adam alayhi salam, when Habil dies, mourns for 40 days. And that number 40 is already a mystical number within Islamic tradition.
Sure.
The Holy Prophet, peace be upon his family, announces his prophet at 40, Moses 40. You've got this concept even when you're looking at Shi'i tradition of the 40-day journey of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam.
Sure.
And so even in our communities, you have sometimes the idea of the Arba'in, Chehlo, Machalismo, when somebody's passed away. Where does that originate from? I always say, Nabi Adam alayhi salam, there are a number of areas that originate with him.
Yeah.
Prayers and supplications and Hajj. And another of them is to mourn for 40 days. So for 40 days, Nabi Adam alayhi salam mourns. But Nabi Adam has this trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will look after him.
Yeah.
And Allah looks after him with the birth of what is truly a gift from God. Yeah.
And you mentioned that birth. Of course, he mourned for 40 days. Now, at some point, he had to stop mourning and essentially move on.
Yeah.
Now, when God grants him that gift, God grants him Sheeth, or in the English language, Seth.
Seth, yeah.
Seth. Now, we don't hear a lot of him. Does he have another name, maybe in history?
Yeah, it's interesting. There are many people who've never heard of Prophet Sheeth alayhi salam. And the closest we've ever come to Seth is when we hear, for example, the Hollywood actor Seth Rogen or something. That's Seth. That's named after Nabi Sheeth. We had a great friend, may Allah bless his soul, who also passed away, who had that name. But Seth has another name, and that is Hibatullah. Hibatullah means a gift from Allah. Our children are gifts from God. If God decides to take back those gifts, then He is more than welcome to. We have full trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The biggest lesson you can learn from when Habil died was that if you have trust in Allah and patience at the moment of trial, Allah will replace with a son who will continue the mantle of nubuwwah in the most pristine of ways.
Yep.
Therefore, you found that Hibat Allah was born. Nabi Adam was about 130 years of age according to certain traditions. And he brought great delight to the family. You know, it's hard losing a son. And Nabi Adam had prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, you appointed Habil, but you took him. I don't know your wisdom, but you are full of wisdom. I can never understand your wisdom. But I know that behind your wisdom there will be a grace and a mercy for us. Ya Allah, I want somebody who will inherit the knowledge and be able to guide this nascent community, this young community, this small community. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends him this gift known as Nabi Sheeth alayhi salam.
Alayhi salam. Now, obviously, of course, Nabi Sheeth would have grown up, would have eventually gotten married. Now, yesterday, as I'm sure the dear viewers will remember, we rejected the idea that Qabil and Habil, committed incest. Wal'iyadu billah. So, who did Prophet Sheeth marry?
Prophet Sheeth alayhi salam marries somebody by the name of Na'ima. As I said yesterday, we don't believe in this legend that can be heard in many circles that Qabil married his sister, or Habil married his sister, or Sheeth married his sister, so that there would be procreation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He wants to, says kun fayakun. At that moment there is a creation that is born. So Nabi Sheeth alayhi salam, he married a lady by the name of Na'ima. With Na'ima he had a child by the name of Huriyya.
Huriyya, wow.
We've forgotten about somebody. Earlier we said that Habil's wife, Turk, was pregnant.
Yes.
She was pregnant, she gave birth to a son, and she decided to name that son after his deceased father. So the son was called Habil.
Wow.
Habil alayhi salam, you find that he ends up marrying who? Huriyya.
Okay.
From Habil and Huriyya, you have the continuous generations. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam mentions in a hadith, what we are today are the continued generations from the marriage of Habil, son of Habil, with Huriyya, the daughter of
Sheeth.
Sheeth.
Subhanallah.
Because there are many people I appreciate, they say, listen, how is there continuation? There are also people who ask, hold on, what happened to Qabil?
Yeah.
Which I think is an interesting question. Because when Qabil killed his brother, his dad just told him, it's as if just get out of here. And he went away from there. But Qabil, having left, did not mean he did not get married. That generation of Qabil continues until Nabi Nuh alayhi salam.
Okay.
So what you have in humanity is that the generations of Qabil continue to reproduce, continue to procreate, and they continue to the time of Nabi Nuh alayhi salam. Now we're going to come to Nabi Nuh in a couple of days.
Yeah.
Because tomorrow we move on to Prophet Idris alayhi salam.
Alayhi salam, yeah.
But what you have is that one part of humanity are represented by Qabil. And another are represented by Habil, but inadvertently through Nabi Sheeth alayhi salam.
Sheeth alayhi, yeah.
So when people ask you the question today, how did the generations continue? Nabi Sheeth's marriage and the resulting marriages is where that procreation continues.
Subhanallah.
Yeah.
Now, when Prophet Sheeth alayhi salam had his daughter Huriyya, naturally there was that father-daughter connection between them. Now, how was the connection between Prophet Sheeth and Prophet Adam alayhi salam?
Very close connection. Very close. Nabi Adam, it's as if his heart found peace with the birth of Nabi Sheeth alayhi salam. You know, Nabi Adam's an old man, don't forget, and Nabi Adam's been through quite a lot. You know, one minute you're created, you're in this garden, then you're told that you're God's Khalifa and that you're going to toil on the earth. So Nabi Adam's been through quite a lot, but really his son is somebody who is a youngest son as well. He's lost one son. The other son's just left and he's rebelled and he, is too arrogant to be willing to accept any advice of any sort. So what you have is this real closeness. And there's this closeness where Nabi Adam would sit, for example, with Nabi Sheeth. He'd sit with him, he'd give him all these pieces of advice, all these pieces of knowledge. One day, Nabi Sheeth alayhi salam was sitting, Nabi Adam was next to him, and there were other people sitting there. Somebody asked the question, who's the greatest of God's creations? So one person said, Nabi Adam alayhi salam. Another said, al-malaika. Another said, the bearers of the arsh. Yes, those angels who bear the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nabi Adam looked at Nabi Sheeth. He said to him, my son, I will tell you who the greatest creations are. When I was created, I saw written, there is no God but God. And the greatest of my creations are Muhammad and his family.
Subhanallah.
Salawatullah wa salamu alayhima. On the doors of Jannah was written, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah wa ashhadu anna Aliyan waliyullah. They would see this clearly there. And then Adam says to Nabi Sheeth, he says to him, and O Sheeth, know something. The two greatest creatures of all of them are Muhammad and Ali.
Wow.
So from that time already, we have every prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already speaking about their belief in Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. Because we mentioned yesterday that Nabi Adam asked for forgiveness by saying, بِحَقِّ Muhammad wa anta al-Mahmud, wa bihaqqi Ali wa anta al-A'la. But you also have this wonderful discussion where he tells him, know that the greatest creatures, one of you is saying the Malaika, another of you is saying Adam, another of you are saying Hamalat al-Arsh, the ones who are bearers of the throne. There are none greater than the ones to be born who are known as Muhammad and Ali. Salawatullah wa salamu alayhima. Therefore you find that Nabi Adam alayhi salam, there were a number of times where he begins to talk to his son about the knowledge that Allah has vested in him. Now someone will say, if his son's a prophet, then Allah must directly provide this knowledge. We have different types of ways in which ilm is given to a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let me explain this to the viewers. One way in which Allah gives ilm to his chosen ones on the earth, to the anbiya, to the awsiya, to the awliya, is through a dream. As we will see in the stories of Nabi Ibrahim and in the stories of Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam. Another way is wahi, of Jibreel communicating with them. Another way in which you have a communication is the communication of ilham, inspiration. That comes with certain of the awsiya or the awliya, in which there's direct inspiration. Another way is that a prophet continues to teach or give the knowledge to the prophet after them. So Nabi Adam alayhi salam, the ilm that he had acquired of knowing the names, you find that he begins to slowly tell Nabi Sheeth, you are my successor. You are the guide to mankind. These are all principles of knowledge and ethics and spirituality that I'm infusing you with so that you continue to guide humanity.
Ahsantum Sayyidina. Thank you for enlightening us on the first part of Prophet Sheeth alayhi salam and the lessons we can derive from his life and apply them into our life. We will be going for a short break now. Please do stay tuned into the break because of the IHDRF campaign that's going on for Ramadan to be able to feed over 1,000 families in Iraq. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. During this blessed month of Shahr Ramadan, we at Imam Hussein Development and Relief Foundation are looking to provide food baskets for 1,000 families living in poverty in and around the blessed city of Karbala. Each food basket contains a variety of essential food supplies that is sufficient to feed roughly a family of 4 for just about 10 days. By donating 20 pounds per food basket, you can play a role in ensuring that nobody living in the city of Imam al-Hussein ever misses an iftar due to poverty. Contribute today and play a part through our website at www.ihdrf.org, or follow us for updates on this campaign for Shahr Ramadan through our social media. May our two masters, Imam al-Hussein and al-Abbas, reward each and every one of you abundantly during this blessed month of Shahr Ramadan as you work to elevate poverty from the great city of Karbala.
Have a duty towards the preservation and the propagation of the message of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Indeed, one of the best ways to work towards the reappearance of Imam al-Mahdi ajjalallahu ta'ala farajul sharif is through promoting the values of Karbala. Imam Hussein Media Group is the only Shia television network that broadcasts globally in 5 different languages: Arabic, Farsi, Turkish, Urdu, and English. We are appealing to the lovers of Imam Hussein alayhi salam worldwide to support the channel such that it may continue its global operations. Imam Hussein Media Group is seeking 1,000 partners to pledge to a £14 contribution per month. This will allow the channel to sustain its operating costs as we continue to spread the message of Imam Hussein alayhi salam in multiple languages across the globe. You be a part of this great legacy and donate today. You can pledge in 2 ways. ihtv.co/PayPal will take you direct to our donation page where you can pledge monthly, or you can call or WhatsApp us on 0044 793 9917163. Imam Hussein TV, your gateway to Karbala.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dearest brothers and sisters and respected viewers. Welcome back to the second part on the discussion of the life of Prophet Sheeth alayhi salam. Now, I hope you've watched that video, and inshallah you will all make a generous contribution during this holy month of Ramadan to feed the orphans and the needy. So Sayyidina, before the break we were discussing, the connection between Prophet Sheeth and his dad. But how about the connection with his brother, Qabil? How did he deal with his arrogance?
Qabil was not happy when he heard about Sheeth. Qabil's... Sometimes you see this in some films where you've got this brother who's caused trouble. He goes away and then he comes back after a while. There are a couple of films I remember seeing which would have stories along those lines. And what you have is that Qabil, who's already angry with the whole world, which he believes has been unfair to him. And sometimes we as humans have this problem where we blame the whole world instead of trying to find solutions of how to, reform or reevaluate our own lives and to rethink some of the decisions we've made. And this Qabil actually comes face to face with Sheeth one day.
Okay.
Yeah, Qabil comes face to face.
Wow.
And he says to him, listen, firstly, I don't want you disclosing to anyone what happened between me and my brother. So make sure you keep that down. And that secondly, if there's anything that my father's been giving to you, you know that this is my rightful place.
Okay.
And he again comes, and we'll come to it later on on the funeral of Nabi Adam alayhi salam, where he comes and makes a huge point to Nabi Adam alayhi salam and to Nabi Sheeth. Now Nabi Adam alayhi salam also warns Nabi Sheeth that be careful of your brother Qabil. Don't reveal everything to him.
Yeah.
Not everything that you know you should say. In our families as well, sometimes we'll face these situations where maybe a brother, a sister, cousins, there are different ways to approach each one. Sometimes you may find bughd from a family member. Shan'an, for example. Very, a lot of hatred. And even those who don't keep relations with you. As Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam in Dua Makarim al-Akhlaq says, وَأَبْدِلْنِي مِنْ بُغْضَةِ أَهْلِ الشَّنَآنِ الْمَحَبَّةِ وَمِنْ عُقُوقِ ذَوِي الْأَرْحَامِ الْمَبَرَّةِ وَمِنْ خِذْلَانِ الْأَقْرَبِينَ النُّصْرَةِ. Oh Allah, change the animosity of my relatives into love for me. Change their hatred into peace with me. And Nabi Adam says, listen, just because he's your brother, be careful. Don't say everything to him. So therefore, even Nabi Adam alayhi salam knows that Qabil is still a major problem for Nabi Sheeth alayhi salam. That in the same way Habil faced the worst of scenarios with his elder brother, Sheeth has to be careful.
Now the advice that Prophet Adam alayhi salam gave to Prophet Sheeth alayhi salam. Now we know that Prophet Adam wasn't going to stick around forever, and at some point that he was going to die. But the way he died, does that have any relation, or is it similar to any other prophet's death? For example, Prophet Dawood alayhi salam?
No, the only similarity he has with Nabi Dawood alayhi salam, when Nabi Adam was created, we have a hadith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Nabi Adam that of the names of the prophets. When Nabi Adam heard the story of Nabi Dawood, he was very much in admiration of the greatness of Nabi Dawood.
Subhanallah.
So Nabi Adam alayhi salam says to the Lord, "O Lord, give 50 years of my life to that Dawood when he is in this world." It's very interesting.
Yeah.
So Nabi Adam is told, for example, Sheeth, he's told about Idris, he's told about Nuh, he's told about Ibrahim, he's told about Ayub, he's told about Lut, he's told about Zakaria, he's told about Yahya, he's told about Dawood, he's told about Sulaiman, he's told about Musa and Isa and so on. But he's very much enchanted by Nabi Dawood.
Wow.
And many hadiths show this, that Adam has a relationship with Dawood alayhi salam.
Subhanallah.
So when it came to the time of his death, Nabi Adam has this conversation with the angel of death.
Yeah.
He looks at life, and like how we all look at life, that, you know what, this life just started and now it's virtually done, There's only, sometimes I look at my own life and it's only yesterday that you were in your teens, in the holy month of Ramadan, growing up in London, in the teens, looking forward to iftar in one of the centers that was built. Then all of a sudden, you're planning your life and you're coming towards the midway point, supposedly.
Yeah.
Nobody has been given a guarantee. So Nabi Adam alayhi salam says to the angel of death, haven't I got a number of years left? And he said, but you gave them to Nabi Dawood alayhi salam.
Subhanallah.
And Nabi Dawood was given an extra 50 years because of Nabi Adam alayhi salam.
Subhanallah.
Yeah.
Now that dialogue occurred between Prophet Adam alayhi salam and the angel of death. Is there any evidence in history where there was a dialogue between Prophet Sheeth and Prophet Adam right before Prophet Adam died? Was there any advice?
Yeah. There's a number of times where Prophet Adam and Prophet Sheeth, just before he dies, he firstly he asks him, go and make a wooden, let's say, treasure box or chest. And this, what we call in Arabic, taboot.
Yeah.
I'd like the viewers to focus on this, please. A taboot, let's say, is like this box. And this taboot would have within it scrolls, scriptures, knowledge, which would be passed on from prophet to prophet. Taboot is mentioned once in the Holy Quran.
Subhanallah.
And we find the mentioning of it later in the story of Musa, David, Goliath, that whole period of Surah Al-Baqarah, the whole verses, you find a mention of the taboot. Therefore, taboot was symbolic. And Nabi Adam alayhi salam tells Sheeth, go and prepare a taboot. And within that taboot, I will give you the first of what prophet to prophet passes on to one another.
Subhanallah.
Later on, you'll have shields in the taboot. Later on, you'll have turbans in the taboot. Later on, you'll have rings in the taboot. Later on, you'll have swords in the taboot. But the first to originate this, now sometimes in our communities, you find a taboot going around the mosque in a wafat or a shahad of an imam. And that taboot is in honor of someone who has died. But the word taboot itself is mentioned within the Holy Quran. And so what you have is Nabi Adam alayhi salam sits with his son. Tells him this is the first thing. Number two, don't marry any of your children to your brother's children.
Yeah.
Because Qabil's children, sadly, were known for their indecency. And so he advises his son. And then he continues to advise him about being conscious of Allah's presence in his life, in every decision that he makes. And so what you have is a devastating time for Nabi Sheeth alayhi salam. There's this real closeness with his dad. And in that period, he's very much affected by his father's final days. But his father leaves behind for him a number of different parchments or symbols of knowledge in order that he is able to continue and guide humanity. Yeah.
Subhanallah. Now Prophet Sheeth continues the legacy of Prophet Adam alayhi salam. But where is it exactly that Prophet Sheeth buried Prophet Adam?
Well, his Salat al-Janazah, Prophet Sheeth is the one who leads the Salat al-Janazah. By the way, Prophet Sheeth tells Jibra'il, you lead the Salat al-Janazah of Nabi Adam. And Jibra'il says, we were ordered by Allah to do sujood to your father. Who are we to come ahead of you to lead the Salat? The takbir of the Salah, according to some narrations, different from ours. It was 75 takbirs.
Okay.
And Sheeth was devastated that there's a hadith that says Jibra'il came to console Sheeth because he was inconsolable. He was really affected by Nabi Adam's death.
Wow.
And his mother Hawa as well. You know, Hawa was a backbone to Adam alayhi salam. She's seen him in every moment.
Yeah.
And she had to bear the killing of her son. And she was very much affected by Nabi Adam's death. And what Nabi Sheeth does is that he buries Nabi Adam alayhi salam in the famous mountain which many would have visited within Mecca's precincts by the name of Mountain of Abu Qubais. So he buries him there.
Okay.
A year later, Hawa dies. 1 year after her husband.
Subhanallah.
It taught us two lessons. Hawa was close to Adam and that your wife will never leave you alone. Even when you die, she's going to come running after you. Nabi Adam must have thought, listen, give me a break. But you know, Hawa, she was giving no breaks. Hawa was there. 1 year later, she had a 15-day illness.
Yeah.
And then she survived. She didn't survive. She passed away. And they were both buried in the Mount Abu Qubais area.
But it's interesting that you mentioned the Mount Abu Qubais because there are many narrations.
Which mention Najaf.
Najaf. That's the one.
Ahsant. Because when we go on ziyarah,
Yep.
we find that next to Imam Ali alayhi salam in Najaf, who's buried? Nabi Adam on one side and who's on the other?
Nabi Nuh.
Nabi Nuh alayhi salam. Many Muslims sadly in the world haven't got a clue where Imam Ali alayhi salam is buried. Many haven't got a clue about Nabi Adam. Many haven't got a clue about Nabi Nuh. When we come to the story of Nabi Nuh, we will find that Nabi Nuh took the body of Nabi Adam alayhi salam and buried him next to Imam Ali alayhi salam.
Wow.
There are exceptional cases when a body which is already buried can be taken from one place to another. Until today in Islamic law. So yes, you're right that the traditions tell us Mountain Abu Qubais, then we go to Najaf and salam on those who are buried next to you, Adam and Nuh. What's happening? What's happening is that Nabi Nuh alayhi salam is the one who had taken the body of Nabi Adam alayhi salam from the mountain of Abu Qubais towards the holy land of Najaf. They are honored to be buried next to Amir al-Mu'mineen, and inshallah all of us will be honored one day to be buried, if Allah allows it, in Wadi Salam, or if we're even more fortunate as a neighbor of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. And as one of the sultans himself mentioned, even if I'm like the dog of Ashab al-Kahf, by the grave of Ali, that's enough for me as an honor.
Subhanallah, subhanallah. Now, as we know, every prophet of Allah had a relationship, had a communication with the angels of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, did the communication between the angels of Allah and Prophet Sheeth start before he was announced as the prophet and successor?
No, when he was announced.
When he was unannounced?
Yeah. When he was announced as a prophet, yeah.
Okay. Now, the real question is, and we're coming, I think, to it tomorrow, which is, who succeeded Prophet Sheeth?
Prophet Sheeth alayhi salam was succeeded, according to some narrations, by his son with the name of Enos. Okay, now these aren't prophets which are necessarily mentioned in the Quran, but we find them in some of the hadith literature. Nabi Sheeth alayhi salam has these 50 scriptures, or 50 parchment, 50 tablets, different ways of describing it, but these are revealed to him. They are revealed to him as a guidance from him towards his community. So sometimes people ask, what did he have? Did he have suhuf? Did he have a holy book? It seems that he has these 50 tablets, which the traditions indicate in his 900 years on the earth.
Subhanallah. Now, in the Quran, it mentions Sabians. Now, the famous verse in the Quran, it says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَالَّذِينَ هَادُوا وَالصَّابِئُونَ وَالنَّصَارَى مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. And it goes so on. Now, they're mentioned in both Surah Al-Baqarah and Surah Al-Ma'idah. Is there any relation to Prophet Sheeth alayhi salam with this?
Yes, it's always an interesting group, the Sabi'. We hear, we know the Yahud, we know the Ansar, Nasara, but when it comes to the Sabi', people always ask this question, that who are the Sabi'? And there is an opinion that they are a group of people who believed in some prophets but not all prophets, and that they all go back to Nabi Sheeth alayhi salam, and that those 50 tablets that we mentioned, those 50 tablets were the tablets which they found as the revelations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala towards mankind. So in the Quran, in Surah Al-Baqarah and Surah Al-Ma'idah, there are 2 mentions of the Sabi'a. And they continue in different communities, by the way, until today. There are still communities of the Sabians that exist until today. And they have a high regard for Prophet Sheeth alayhi salam, and a high regard for those 50 tablets that were left behind. And it's interesting, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the Jews, mentions the Christians, and mentions the Sabians, that if all of them believe in God and the Day of Judgment, then they are people who have hope in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as long as there was good deeds alongside those. So Nabi Sheeth alayhi salam, he becomes a major figure, not just for the Muslim world, but also for the Sabian world. Now for the Muslim world, he remains a major figure in that many people still visit his grave. But the question is, where is the grave of Nabi Sheeth? We said that Nabi Adam alayhi salam is buried in Najaf next to Imam Ali alayhi salam. Nabi Sheeth, there are different opinions about where his grave is. One opinion, which our friends who are watching from Baalbek, the Baalbekis, you will never find a group of people who have as much love for Imam Ali alayhi salam as the people of Baalbek.
Subhanallah.
Renowned for their love of Imam Ali alayhi salam. I have so many people who I love and admire from Baalbek, many friends of ours from Baalbek, not just the ones who are in Lebanon itself, but also in Canada, in Australia, lots of top Baalbeki friends of ours. And Baalbeki will always tell you, nobody loves Imam Ali like they do, alayhi salam. And Baalbek, you have a number of important places for visitation of holy figures. And of them, for example, they talk of Sayyidah Khawla alayhi salam, There is a maqam for Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam, in the sense that the Sabaya, the prisoners, may have gone through Ba'albek on their way to Sham from Kufa. But you also have a grave, and this is a great excuse, by the way, if you want to go on holiday to Lebanon, to say that I'm going on ziyarah, and that might be an idea for our future, where we do an Imam Hussein TV trip, if Hajj Qasim and Said Murtada allow us to go to Lebanon, to Ba'albek, and do the ziyarah. And by the way, a shout out to Said Murtada, it's his birthday. Happy birthday to Said Murtada al-Husseini. I don't know if he'll make an appearance. But you know, all of a sudden that room where they're all normally so loud has gone quiet. But there's the remains of cake everywhere here on the ground, which clearly means that I've missed out on the cake, and clearly means that somebody's definitely broken their fast much earlier than me. So now, what was that? Oh, you've saved me some. Okay, so they've saved me some cake. Now,
I'm with you on this one.
I don't know how we got to the cake of Said Murtada al-Husseini, but that must be a sign. So over there, Nabi Sheeth, they say, is buried where? Ba'albek. Some, and Ba'albek, you know, you go there, there really is a reverence given. There's karamat where people have had unbelievable miracles they've seen, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has helped them through the wasila of Nabi Sheeth alayhi salam. It's interesting that people always talk of Bab al-Hawa'ij, Abu al-Fadl, Bab al-Hawa'ij, Imam Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salam. But you know, Nabi Sheeth, there are people who have had great stories with Nabi Sheeth in the land of Ba'albek. Likewise, you also have a burial site for Nabi Sheeth in the land of Mosul. Now, Mosul saw a number of Anbiya. When we get to Nabi Yunus' story, that's going to be an interesting one in relation to Nainawa or Mosul. So, Nabi Sheeth alayhi salam eventually is buried in that area, and you've got his son who succeeds him, inshallah. Tomorrow, we look at Nabi Idris alayhi salam and what's happening there.
Now, when you talk about the burial of Nabi Sheeth alayhi salam, the particular area that he's in. Now, if there's narrations that state that Nabi Sheeth was buried somewhere else or buried in different places, but would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala show miracles at each one of those sites because, let's say, the intention of the person going there was to, you know, ask Allah?
At the end of the day, these are houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know? And if they're houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, any house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a certain energy surrounding it, has a certain reverence surrounding it. And likewise, if you're going to that house and that house is the actual house or which encapsulates where Nabi Sheeth lived and where he died, then of course the energy is even greater. But ultimately your niyyah is to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, help me. And at any place on the earth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can help you. Naturally, there are some places where the dua is accepted quicker than others.
SubhanAllah. Now, Sayyidina, we're going to take a few questions from WhatsApp. This first one says, Salam. First of all, Sayyid Ammar's majalis are the reason I started praying and have been praying for a year. SubhanAllah. He's the light of our religion today. Now, the question is, Sayyid Ammar says that if Iblis asks for forgiveness, he will be forgiven. That was in yesterday's discussion. Now, the brother's asking how. Iblis's belief and understanding towards Allah is light years ahead of ours. Then why not apologize today and Allah will forgive him, as he knows that eventually he will burn in hell?
That means that Iblis has not understood Allah. To understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala isn't just to say فَبِعِزَّتِكَ, by your glory, by your majesty. When Allah asks you to do something, you don't start saying, I'll do it on my own terms. This affects many Muslims, by the way. You know, we may say, La'natullah ash-shaytan, but many of us have got that attitude with Allah. On the areas that suit me, I will obey you. The areas that don't, I'm not interested. The areas I'm not ready for, you can wait for me. That shouldn't be the attitude with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when someone says Iblis's understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is light years ahead of us, you can understand Allah in certain areas. You could talk to Allah with respect. But what's the point when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks you to do something and you're like, no? That means you haven't understood Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Now the second question is coming from a sister saying, Salam Sayyidina, I'm a Shia and my mother is from a different school in Islam. We are the only ones fasting in my house. Can I break my fast with her? As she breaks it earlier than us, it hurts me to see my mum breaking her fast.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can break your fast with your mother. And we have renowned maraja in the world today who allow us to break our fast. Some call it the timing of Ahl Sunnah. It shouldn't be called the timing of anyone.
Yeah,
there are ways in which people derive exactly what is seen as sunset, and you'll find that scholars such as Ayatollah Muhammad Taqi al-Mudarrisi, Ayatollah Sadiq al-Rawhani, Ayatollah Muhammad Sa'id al-Hakim, all of them have spoken of the fact that a person can break his time at what is seen as being the time of other schools in Islam. So there's no issues there.
There's many questions coming in now. Salams, and I wish to ask the following. I think you answered this one, so I think we'll move on to his second question. How is it that these prophets lived so long compared to us current humans? We don't live so long, and also some prophets lived for a very short amount of time.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who decides how long we live on this earth. You're thinking that, Nabi Sheeth lived for a long time. He lived for 900 years. You come to Nabi Nuh, then we've got long. Nabi Nuh alayhi salam in a couple of days. Nabi Nuh becomes a prophet around 850 years of age. I don't know if I'm going to make it till 38. And he's becomes a prophet at 850.
Yeah.
So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides. There are some great personalities on this earth who lived for 3,000 years. There's some great ones like Imam al-Jawad who lived for 25 years. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives life and He takes life. And we always say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un.
Ahsantum Sayyidina. Thank you very much
Thank
for that
you. Well done.
episode.
Pleasure.
Prophet Sheeth alayhi salam. Inshallah, that encourages you, brothers and sisters, and our dear viewers to go out and study on Prophet Sheeth alayhi salam, and study on those prophets and read up on those prophets that are not really mentioned in our majalis or mentioned anywhere. And I'd like to thank you, and inshallah tomorrow we'll be looking at Prophet Idris alayhi salam. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.